This is the survivors of the show of Visual History Foundation. Today is Sunday, July 27th, 1997. The survivor is Rosfeld Rosman, maiden name Steinberg. The interviewer is Merle Goldberg. We are in Los Angeles, California, in the United States of America. And the interview will be conducted in English, but the survivor who is deaf will be signing. So the survivor will be on mic channel number 3. She will be using her voice but signing throughout. The interviewer will be on channel 2, and the translators or interpreters will be on channel 1. My name is Merle Goldberg, and I'm conducting an interview in the English language with Rosfeld Rosman today, Sunday, July 27, 1997, in Los Angeles, California, in the United States of America. First, tell me your full name as you are called today and spell all of those names for me.
R-O-S-E, Rose, spelled F-E-L-D, hyphen, Rosman, R-O-S-M-A-N.
Could you tell me your full name at birth and spell that name for me?
Steinberg, S-T-E-I-N-B-E-R-G, that was the last name. And Reza, R-A-I-S-A.
Could you tell me your full birth date?
April 1st, 1917.
And in what city and country were you born in 1917, as the borders were then?
In Kiev, in Russia.
Now, you told me earlier that you mark Pinsk on your papers. Why is it that you mark Pinsk on your papers?
Because all of the people that fled to Pinsk had no birth certificates with them. When we went to the city hall in Pinsk and asked for birth certificates, they issued them with the birthplace marked as Pinsk in Poland.
To begin with, please tell me about your parents and their full names.
My father's name was Mitchell, or Michelle, Bendat Steinberg, B-E-N-D-A-T. My mother was Tanya, her birth name, Dukat, D-K-A-T, Steinberg.
You don't have to spell anything anymore. It makes it harder for the people who are watching to follow the interview. Why don't you tell me about your parents and what your father, when they met, when they married, and
when my mother was 15 years old, she met my father, and it was love at first sight. They later got married and went on their honeymoon in Italy. I have pictures of that.
why don't you tell me about your parents, what they did for a living, what life was like?
Well, after they married, they set up their own business as couriers working together. They got along and progressed very well in their business until after I was born in 1917, there was a revolution. The communists took over my parents' business. and they lost it. They escaped to Pinsk at that time, and later moved to Warsaw and established their business there again as couriers. They continued with that business until 1935. When they were stricken with poverty because they were taxed by the government. We had a very beautiful home at that time, but they had to pay taxes on everything. A tax on the light fixtures, a tax on the stove. The government took everything in the form of taxes. And my father decided to escape to Paris. He left the family with some of his machinery for making fur coats and established a business alone in Paris. A year later, my mother joined him by hiking her way and taking a boat to meet my father. And they were finally together again and were able to go on with their business. 2 years later, my sisters and I went to Belgium. We could not get visas. But a man who was a friend of my father's, a well-known name, had a car in Paris. And he went to Belgium, met us there, and we escaped to Paris.
I want to interrupt. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. I'm going to back you up. First, I want to know, what about your grandparents? Did you know any of your grandparents?
No, I did not know.
Do you know how long your family had been living in the Kiev area prior to your birth?
I lived there until I was 4 when we moved in with the family. But I don't know really how long they were there before that. They had the business when I was something.
So you don't know whether or not your great-grandparents or your great-great-grandparents had been living in Russia?
No, I have no idea.
Now, you need to tell me you've told me your parents' full names. I'd like to know the names of your siblings and how many you have.
The eldest was Clara, and of course her last name is Thunder. And the other sister was Sarah, S-A-U-R-A, and then me, I was right.
Can you tell me the birth dates of your two sisters?
My oldest sister, I forgot.
Was she about 10 years older than you?
Yes. Oh, no, 8 years older.
So what year was that?
She was 8 years older than I.
And you were, but I need for you to tell me the date, the year that she was born.
My sister, Clara, let's see, I can't remember the year, but she was born in Kiev, 8 years older than I.
Okay,
So, let's see. I was born April 1st, 1917. She's 8 years older than I am. We're quite far apart.
1909. And in
Okay, maybe that's it.
and in what year was your other sister born?
Sarah was born, let's see, I was 1917, she was 19, April 13th, 1916. She's a year older.
I want to take you back to your childhood. When you were a little girl, what kind of house did your mother keep? Was it a kosher house? Was it a religious house?
We were conservative. My mother was kosher. Until we moved to Paris, when they no longer kept a kosher house, but they did keep the Sabbath. And we always had chicken or fish on Shabbat.
Tell me about Sabbath. Since your mother kept Sabbath,
Yes, we kept Sabbath every Friday.
What
We kept the blessings over the candles.
what were the preparations like for Sabbath in your household?
We had a maid who would clean the house for us. Actually, we had 3 maids. Each of us siblings kind of had someone to help us.
What about the cooking?
We had 3 maids who slept in the house with us.
Okay. You also, when you're signing to her, you should always say the questions. Like when you were just talking, you need to speak at the same time, so that who's ever listening will know what's going on at all times. Otherwise, it will become confusing to them. So we all need to speak, even though we're not on camera. Okay. What was it like in terms of the cooking, the food preparation? What were the beautiful smells?
We had the maid cook for us because my mother would work, and when she got home, everything would be ready. The 3 of us sisters were born at home and not in a hospital. And my mother would try to breastfeed us, and the maids would remind my mother, and then she would feed us and then go back to work. My parents were very comfortable at that time.
What about religious life for you? Because you were deaf, how did you learn any kind of Jewish prayers?
I went to a Jewish deaf school in Germany all during my growing up years, and that deaf school was very orthodox. We kept kosher, and Friday night we would have temple services. We had to wear aprons on Fridays, and we were not allowed to sign in the temple. We had to listen. There was no rabbi there, but we had a principal who would conduct the legal service.
What was the name of the
And then the boys and girls would have to sit separately.
What was the name of the school?
Oh, it has a very long name. Israelite, Palestinian. School for the deaf. The German word for school. The interpreter's not sure of this spelling. Pastor means deaf and dumb. And you have a German book over there with the name Hauptschule, P-H-D-S-T, but the other word in the school, A-L-T, Israelite, Hauptschule. Institute, Media Institute, German working. And that was in Germany. My family was in Poland, but I lived after Poland.
So let's go back to that point. I'd like to know how your parents discovered you were deaf.
I was born hearing, but when I was 3, I became deaf. My parents told me that I had been ill with some kind of brain fever or illness or something. Doctors told them that I would be either deaf or blind, and it turned out that I was deaf. And then I was sent to a school in Warsaw, deaf school in Poland. There was a large institute there that was not a Jewish school, and I stayed at home and went to school every day. The maid would take me to school and bring me home in the afternoon. And I was learning prayers in Catholic or some other religion which I didn't understand. And when we ate with the family, I was always put in the corner, and I would cross myself, and my mother got very angry when she saw me do that, and took me out of that school, and didn't want me to do it anymore. They wanted to find another deaf school. There was a Jewish school in Warsaw, a small private school. I had to stay there at that school. It was a residential school. The supervisor took my father and to show him the school, and my father spoke to them, and the principal was agreeable to take me there. But my father wanted to visit the classroom, and the classes were held inside the temple, and my father did not like that. He wanted to know where the dormitories were, and he didn't like the furniture that was in the dormitories. He didn't like the classrooms in the temple. He looked at the dining room, and he wasn't happy with that. He didn't feel it was the right place for his daughter, and he didn't put me in that school. My parents were trying to figure out where to put me in school. They had a friend who was a doctor in Russia, and they went to the Russian doctor and asked him about a school. The doctor suggested a very religious school in Berlin and gave my father the address. My father wrote to the principal of that school explaining that he had a deaf daughter, and that school welcomed me immediately. And my mother bought a great big doll to give me with a stroller, and we went on the train 18 hours from Poland to Germany. We got to that school, and my mother met the principal, and the principal patted me on the cheek, and my mother wanted to visit the classroom and see the dormitory. The principal welcomed her and showed her around the school. They were not small rooms in the dormitory. It was one very large room. And all the teenagers and the younger children were all in the same room according to their age. And my mother liked that. And mother looked at the temple, and she liked the look there, and she looked at the dining room, and she liked that. The boys and girls were kept separate, but my mother thought that was fine. They were very happy with that. And I did a kiss. The principal was kind of flirting with me, and my mother said goodbye, and my mother left me alone, and I played and forgot all about my mother. I had a great time playing. I was in kindergarten about 6 months. It was a very strict school, but I was very happy there. The school got a call from my parents inquiring about me, and the school told them I was doing very well, and I was very happy. I stayed there 9 years, but during holidays like Passover and Purim, I would go home and be with the family and stay for a month and then go back to the school. And 8 when the school made a badge for me with my address on it, and it would be very easy for me to go by myself, and my parents could find me at the train station because I had this badge on. So the conductor would be able to take me to my parents if I couldn't find them, or even, if necessary, put me in a taxi, and I would get home that way because I had the name and address on my badge. My parents were always glad to see me, and I loved going to that school very much. Until I graduated in 1932, and I was really heartbroken when I graduated. I was only 15 at that time, and wanted to learn English, and wanted to go to a trade school so I could learn some kind of work. My father was happy to have me stay in school and wanted me to stay at a YWCA where I could go to school and stay at the Y, and my father did pay for that. And that was 1932. I did go home and told my father I had this place ready and was ready to go to school. My father was very happy about that. But then he started to hear about the Nazis taking over in Germany and heard about the propaganda and didn't want me to go back to Berlin. I was very upset. I was really angry about that, but I had to stay there. And in 1932, Father went to Paris, and then later my mother went, and then finally the three of us joined him, and we were all in Paris for a new life.
But we're going to back up yet again. And what I want to ask you is, since you spent so much time away from your family...
Ask me about a boyfriend?
Not yet.
Okay, about school?
Yes, and about your family. Since you spent so much time away from your family as a child, what kind of memories do you have of your parents from this early period in your life? What are the strongest ones that you remember?
Oh, I remember Passover. It always was a big family gathering with 30 people around a large table. My mother would invite anyone to come to Passover. And then Purim, I also remember that celebration, and also the big table with all of these people. My mother always bought nuts for Passover, and different sized nuts. There were 3 different containers or sacks full of nuts, and she had them all laid out on the floor, and there were eggs and matzah and things for Passover. So I remember those.
Since you were going to a Jewish school in Berlin, what kinds of Jewish prayers were you taught, and were you able to participate?
I learned Hebrew, but I had forgotten most of it. I remember the prayer for the candles and for the wine. Those are the 2 that I still remember. We also did exercises at school, and we had art training and learned ice skating and swimming. We were forced to go swimming. It was required. And I got a really good education there. I learned how to sew and how to cook.
But getting back
I loved to cook very much.
Getting back to the prayers, when you would be home with your family for holidays, how would you participate in the services at dinner, for instance?
At temple, on Saturday morning we would go to temple for Shabbat. Because we were Orthodox, we did have to pray on Friday night, Saturday morning. And sometimes when I was little, I didn't participate, but my father did.
But on Friday nights, for instance, when your mother would say the prayers,
we were all together with the family.
how did you participate with your mother, though?
I would be seated with the family, and we would go to temple and then come home. And then Saturday morning, but I didn't always go on Saturday morning. But we would stay home. And we would have the maids taken care of us.
Can you still say the prayers today?
Well, I just say the blessing on the wine and the candle.
Would you do that for us, please?
And the blessing on the bread.
Well, maybe would you mind saying the prayer for the candles? Could you do it one more time, and then Beverly, if you wouldn't say it, so I could just hear her. Thank you. Thank you. That was beautiful. You also mentioned about Purim. What kind of costumes or what kind of fun games were there at Purim?
We had a lot of fun with the digital costumes. We had a show. We always had a show. It was always the story of Esther and Joseph. We did different stories. A story of Abraham. I've got pictures of that also.
You said that you were in Germany in the 1920s through the early 1930s. Is that correct?
No, it was 1923 to 1932.
While you were in Berlin, do you have any memories of the very early Nazis in...
In 1932, I really didn't know anything about it.
Okay. Since you didn't live at home, what kind of toys did you play with, or did you even have toys since you were living in a school?
There were plenty of toys. We weren't always allowed to play, though. We had to learn to sew and reading, cooking, exercise. The toys were mainly for Saturday when school was closed. We play on Saturday, but not during the school week.
You know what? We're going to stop here and change the tape.